I was able to go down to the Houston Museum of Natural History a couple weeks ago, and they had an Acrocanthosaurus skeleton next to a T-Rex, and it was really neat to be able to see the difference between those two. Another difference is the time. T-Rex was walking this earth 65 million years ago when the meteorite impact struck the earth, wiping out dinosaurs as we know it. Acrocanthosaurus was here 113 million years ago. So while these two dinosaurs shared a very similar niche in the environment, they never actually saw each other. A bulldog has stocky bones, big, thick bones. I was able to go down to the Houston Museum of Natural History a couple weeks ago, and they had an Acrocanthosaurus skeleton next to a T-Rex, and it was really neat to be able to see the difference between those two. Another difference is the time. T-Rex was walking this earth 65 million years ago when the meteorite impact struck the earth, wiping out dinosaurs as we know it. Acrocanthosaurus was here 113 million years ago. So while these two dinosaurs shared a very similar niche in the environment, they never actually saw each other. They had two very different time frames. We're talking about early to mid-Cretaceous right here versus the end of the Cretaceous period where T-Rex was. So very similar, but yet very, very different dinosaurs. Here we can see a number of individuals, too. You can see a left foot right here, right foot, left foot. You can see another individual, much larger individual, heading towards you. Left foot, right foot, left foot. And you can see another individual heading this way. So, left foot, or excuse me, right foot, left foot. Then we skip a foot, come back to the left foot. How come we skip a foot?
I guess it's one-legged.
One-legged? You just decided to hop that one?
I guess
It just washed away.
maybe washed away.
Could have, yeah. How many of us have ever stepped in mud? No? Well, 113 million years ago, this used to be mud. This was a mud flat. Actually, it was a beach. Behind you guys was a shallow inland sea. Behind me would have been a really dense forest. And right here is a beach, but it was a very specific beach. It was a mud flat. So very flat and muddy everywhere. The name lends itself very well. So you've got these animals walking in mud, making their footprints. Now, as an expert walking in mud, is every single mud puddle that we walk into the exact same?
No.
Oh, it's different. Sometimes the mud is really hard, and it packs onto your shoe, and by the end of your hike, you're 2 inches taller because you got all that mud on your shoe. Sometimes the mud is really soupy, and your foot sinks in there, and then it pulls your shoe off as you're trying to pull your foot out, right? Very different kinds of mud. Well, this mud had all those differences in it too. The mud over here was really nice and firm, and it held its shape really well. So you can see a lot of detail in this Acrocanthosaurus track. Now, if we go just a few feet over, the mud got a lot soupier. So when Acrocanthosaurus stepped right here, that mud squished up over his toes, and he drew his foot out to take the next step. You see this little crack right in here? That's where his toe went up underneath the mud. In fact, I can get my, hopefully nothing's in there, I can get my entire hand back up in here to my watch band. That's how far back that toe hole goes. So different consistencies of mud are going to give you different types of tracks. Sometimes you step in the mud and you don't leave a track at all. Right? So that can attribute to missing footprints sometimes. You know, the animal didn't just disappear. Probably didn't hop on one foot. Could have. But you got your right step, left step. Oh, maybe the mud wasn't perfect to hold a footprint right here. But the mud got better and was able to capture the footprint right there. See a very similar instance with the individual walking north here. See a left foot, right foot, left foot, then just the outermost digit of the next right foot with a cigarette butt in it. Before those tracks teeter off. So different consistencies of mud are going to give you different types of tracks, even from the same individual. These dinosaurs are just as dynamic as us. They are not the slow, lumbering beasts that scientists used to think of. They're just as fast as us, just as fast as modern-day animals, move just like modern-day animals. So you can have different consistencies of tracks, different types of tracks within the same trackway of an animal, depending on how it was moving. So that's just one dinosaur I've been talking about, Acrocanthosaurus, a dinosaur that could stand up to 15 feet tall and weigh up to 7 tons, the apex predator of the early Cretaceous right here. Now, as big as that dinosaur is, it's actually quite small in comparison to the next species. The next species I want to show you is right here. This entire footprint right here is the back right foot of a Sauroposeidon. Sauroposeidon is a sauropod, like the long neck. So it's a herbivorous dinosaur. Diet consists of plants, but one of, if not the tallest dinosaurs ever discovered. Now, this is not the biggest track that we have of Sauroposeidon right here, but it is a nice average size. These dinosaurs could grow up to 60 feet tall and weigh up to 44 tons. Just a massive, massive creature. You can see the back right foot here. Then you can see the front foot right here. Two different shapes, right? Now, a lot of times you won't actually get an individual front footprint. Why is that? Why would you just consistently get the back feet? It's trampled? Or you can say?
The back foot has more weight on it.
Back foot has more weight on it? It's trampled? Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of times, anybody ever watch a cat walk? You ever watched a cat walk? What do their back legs do? Do they step in the same footprint as the front foot? A lot of cats will do that. They'll step with their front footprint and they'll put their back foot right in the same track. So a cat and Sauroposeidon are very different. They're not two similar animals by any means, but that back foot usually steps into their front footprint, destroying that front footprint completely, leaving you only with the back feet. If you do get to see a front footprint, it's awesome. A lot of times it'll just be a little crescent moon shape at the top of the back footprint. So there's a good example of that right down here. If I'll move down there at the end of the talk, you can see what I'm talking about right there. But a lot of times you'll just get the back feet of Sauroposeidon on that one. Big enough to where, you can take a bath. Little ones can take a bath in them. Just absolutely massive, massive footprints.
That name, did it spend time in the inland sea, or was it always in the mudflat?
Gotcha. So, long-winded answer to this question.
Sorry, y'all.
No. It's great. It's a great segue. Initially, scientists thought that Sauroposeidon was so big, and generally, not just Sauroposeidon, all sauropods, all long necks. They thought they were so big that they must be mostly aquatic. So just like a whale, that it needs the buoyancy of the ocean to survive. When it becomes beached, it's kind of a distance for it. So they think, okay, this massive animal, surely it can't support itself on land. It must be mostly aquatic. The fossil record was supporting that hypothesis too, because before they found these tracks, specifically these tracks here in the park, all they saw of sauropods were the back footprint. Never saw a front footprint, and they didn't even see the full thing. All they saw were just where the claws dug into the mud. So in their mind, they're seeing this relatively shallow body of water, and these animals swimming around in the water, using their back legs to kind of touch the bottom and help steer and locomote. That was their hypothesis. It wasn't until paleontologists came here to this area and found tracks here in this area of Sauroposeidon where they saw, hey, that's a full back foot. That's a full front foot. Left side, right side, left side, right side. They're seeing these tracks. This was definitive evidence that these animals could, in fact, stand on solid ground and support their own weight. So originally, scientists believed that sauropods were mostly aquatic until they found these tracks, and then it was able to really open their eyes and say, you know, that's not entirely accurate. These things could absolutely stand under their own weight. So what this area is, I mentioned it's a mud flat. These animals, specifically Sauroposeidon, was using this as kind of a highway and byway. You know, swimming in the ocean, that's going to take some energy. Walking through a very dense forest, that's going to take some energy. But this clear mud flat right here, these animals were moving north and south. We actually see a dominant direction in Sauroposeidon tracks. It's north and south, which is the orientation of the beach. We see groups or herds moving up and down the coastline. What's even cooler, within the center of these herds, we can see juvenile Sauroposeidon tracks in the middle of a group. Why would we see juvenile tracks in the middle of a group? Yes, sir.
Because they're safer in the middle instead of on the outside.
Ooh. Is there a modern day animal that...
Buffalo.
Buffalo does that? Yeah. Elephants, too? Yeah, when a predator comes near, they put their babies in the center of the group and protect them, right? Sauroposeidon was doing the exact same thing. Because you've got hungry Acrocanthosaurus around here roaming around. Now, while it's probably not the most advantageous thing for you, if say you're the biggest, baddest Acrocanthosaurus there is, and you're hungry for Sauroposeidon, are you going to try to take down a full-grown Sauroposeidon who, granted, you're 7 tons and 15 feet tall. The Sauroposeidon is 44 tons and 60 feet tall. Now, in my mind, that's a gamble. That's a gamble to take down the big adults. But did you hatch out of your egg as an adult? No. The biggest egg I've ever read about is no bigger than a soccer ball. So these animals had to grow from a soccer ball size to 60 foot tall. And the only really way to do that is with a molecular unit, is with the support of the rest of your species. Because hungry Acrocanthosaurus is here to pick you off, right? So you've got to rely on the rest of your family to help you get big enough to survive on your own.
How can you be so sure, looking at the tracks, that it belonged to a certain species?
So what they do is, initially, you've just got tracks. Without any skeletal remains, you've just got tracks. And you can start to classify, well, the three-toed tracks is very different from a sauropod track. Mm-hmm. So we can classify that differently. But yeah, how do we get to a species? Well, you have bones that are found within the same age range of rocks, and then you look at that skeletal structure of the foot, and you start to try to make those connections. The great thing about science is, as we learn more, we can change, oh, well, maybe that wasn't this dinosaur, but it's actually attributed to this dinosaur who has a very similar footprint, but because we found this tiny little piece right over here, now we know definitively it was this one and not that one. And then 20 years later, we're like, oh, well, actually, both of these dinosaurs had that tiny little feature, so maybe it could be. You know, it's the fun and frustrating thing about science. So they use bones that they have found within the area to help narrow that down.
Discovered, and how were they identified?
So the first official track discovery was made in 1909. There was a little boy by the name of George Adams, 10 years old. How old are you? No, you, sir.
You're 9.
You're 9? Okay, you got nothing to worry about then. 10 years old, playing hooky from school, exploring a creek, and he came across the first theropod trackway. So that was the first official discovery of tracks. 1908, there was a huge flood that came down here and scoured the bottom of the river, revealing the track layer underneath. Now, that was the first official discovery. Likely humans that were in this area had seen these tracks before, but did they know to associate them with dinosaurs? Maybe not. You know, dinosaurs didn't really take off or begin to be discovered until the 1800s. So, a Native American in the area who came and saw a track like the three-toed Acrocanthosaurus track, maybe they don't know to equate it to dinosaurs because there's no knowledge of dinosaurs, but you equate it to what you do know. Have you ever seen a turkey track? I man, turkey tracks look so much like dinosaur tracks. In my mind, I would go, that's a giant turkey. Early settlers, early Anglo settlers in the area, when they came across Sauroposeidon tracks, prehistoric elephant, done. They didn't know about dinosaurs yet, so you equate it to what you do know at that point. But once the dinosaur fever spread throughout the world, and more dinosaurs were discovered, and we were able to start narrowing down what these dinosaurs are.
When did they come and excavate the dinosaur prints to take up to New York?
So that was in the 40s. Roland T. Byrd. 1940s is when Roland T. Byrd came and excavated this section of trackway just upriver. If y'all take this layer of rock that I'm stamping on, follow it underground, under your feet, it pops out just upriver on either side of the water right there. And on the right side of the bank, from this angle that you're looking at, you can see two right angles cut out of that rock. Those two right angles are where Roland T. Byrd did his excavation. Again, that was in the 40s.
Where did they go?
So those tracks are now, the vast majority of them are in New York City in the American Museum of Natural History up there. And then there's about a 20-foot section that is down in Austin outside the Texas Memorial Museum. Last I heard, they were remodeling that exhibit, so if you go down there, you're just going to see it boarded up.
The other question I had is, how can you know that these tracks were all formed on the same day, for example? I mean, if this was a beach and animals visited often, it could have happened over the course of several weeks, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is a snapshot in time, geologically speaking. Geologic time scale is so vast that I tell you, I can't fathom that amount of time. I can do the math, I can see the numbers, but to really fathom the amount of time that geologic history covers, it's incredible. So this is a snapshot in time, geologically speaking. Now, all these tracks may have been laid on the same day, but probably over the course of a couple weeks. Probably. Again, we are on a mudflat. This is a tidal mudflat. So you've got the beach down here. You've got inland behind me. Now, how many of us have ever been to the beach making footprints in the sand? What happens to your footprints as soon as that wave comes?
Gone.
It's a high energy environment. Now, this environment wasn't the same as the beaches that we go vacation at. This is a low energy environment, so you don't have those waves coming and crashing, which would destroy the footprints. This was much lower energy. The tidal water comes in, comes in, comes out. So after a while, the tracks would erode away. So you may have a track like this that was laid down, and then some of that tidal action kind of started to erode the detail away. Well, maybe a couple days later, you have another Acrocanthosaurus walking through here and making these tracks that are a little deeper and haven't had the chance to erode away yet. But to be a fossil, to be a fossilized track, to be a fossilized bone, you need one specific thing to happen very quickly after you are either made in the mud or you die. You need to be covered up fast. You need rapid burial. So, we're on a beach. How do we get that rapid burial?
Flood.
Mudslide, flood.
Hurricanes, normally.
Yeah, hurricanes. The hurricane season's starting up right now, right? So think about an offshore storm. That offshore storm is churning up the water in the ocean. As that storm surge comes inland, it's carrying a whole bunch of sediment with it. As it comes inland, it's starting to lose its energy and can't carry that sediment anymore, so it has to precipitate that sediment down or rain down. That sediment from the storm surge fills up the tracks, and that's your rapid burial action. Now, sea level at this time is already rising, so you've got more and more and more layers deposited on top. The layers that you're standing on right now have a bunch of marine fossils in them, which indicates that was a deeper water environment than what I'm standing on right here. So you have all these layers stacking up on top of each other, and all that time and pressure starting to lithify the mud right here, turning it into rock. Then it's buried for 100 million years, 113 million years. It's not until Texas itself starts to experience uplift, the continent that Texas sits on starting to rise, modern day drainage basins starting to take form, and starting to carve out this valley. That river had to carve through all of that rock on that down that hill until it got to this specific spot today. So if we were here 150 years ago, back before 1909, we might not have seen these tracks because the river hadn't eroded down that far yet. If we come back in another 150 years, well, these tracks likely won't be here. They'll be eroded away because the river is continuously eroding down further and further. Now, maybe these tracks that we're looking at today are going to be lost, but there are tracks under your feet right now. We just got to wait till this stuff erodes away and reveals those, say, new tracks. Still 113 million years old, but they're new to us.
It's amazing how many sequence of events have to fall into place, you know.
It really is. It has to line up perfectly every time. You think about what it takes to fossilize. Well, you want to have, if you're a body, you want to have bones or a shell, something hard. Soft tissue doesn't like to fossilize very well. It decomposes. So think about all the organisms that maybe don't have hard tissue or bones or shells. They're not going to fossilize very well. Take all the organisms that ever existed, and then the ones that have a body conducive to fossilization. Okay, it's getting smaller now. Now take the ones that actually were in the right conditions that got covered up quickly. Okay. Now take the ones that got covered up quickly and were left undisturbed for millions of years so that they could lithify. All right, let's get smaller. Now take the ones that were exposed by erosion. Okay, now that's even smaller. Now take the ones that you have a human with enough wherewithal that walks by that specific location and is able to say, hey, that weird looking hole in the ground, that's not just a weird looking hole in the ground, but that's evidence of past life. And it gets even smaller. So when you think about all of life that ever existed and the life that we know about, it's but a minuscule fraction. It always boggles my mind when you try to think just how much we don't know.
Yeah.
But you don't know what you don't know, you know?
And even the small snapshot has like taught us so much. It's just crazy.
It is. It really, really is.
Are these the only two dinosaurs that we found out here at Dinosaur Tracks?
So we think we have possibly up to 4 species here in the park. We have Acrocanthosaurus. We have Sauroposeidon here in the main track site. And these are by far the 2 most prominent dinosaurs that you're going to find in the park. We may also have Iguanodon, which is one of the very first dinosaurs ever officially discovered, officially written about. We also think we might have an ornithomimid. Not sure about the species, but that's an ostrich-like dinosaur. Those tracks are much more rare, I should say, than Acrocanthosaurus and Sauroposeidon. So possibly up to 4 species. Now, we know that, if I was thinking about the amount of species living 113 million years ago at this time, I would conclude that there are more than 4. There are likely more than 4. But how come we only have 4 species represented here?
Some haven't been found yet.
Some haven't been found yet, exactly. Think about the environment. Now, this particular environment right here was in a state about a meter or 2 underwater. We can tell that because of all this little pepper marks right in here. These pepper marks in here, this is another type of trace fossil. This is burrowing organisms. So they just burrow in the mud and do their thing, eating and getting all good, happy in the mud. We have analogous organisms that are alive today that are in about a meter or 2 of water. So we're able to use the present as a key to the past as to what was happening. So this particular snapshot right here likely was in about a meter or 2 of water all the time. So let's just say it's 2 meters of water for argument's sake. I'm a fairly tall guy, a little over 6 foot. If it's 2 meters of water, am I going to be making tracks? No, I'm going to be like treading water, maybe kind of bouncing on the top. So I'm not even going to make tracks. You literally had to be big enough in this environment to leave your mark. So there could have been much smaller organisms swimming in this water that just never touched the mud and left a footprint. You know? What other questions we got?
One kind of off-topic question I have
Yeah.
is, from the asteroid strike 66 million years ago, I read that there was a lot of debris that was thrown into the atmosphere, and also a lot of just sediments that were thrown out, like about 500,000 miles away from the impact site.
It's incredible. So I recently read, it's been a couple years now, so there's going to be holes in my memory of this story. But in Montana area, they found layers of fish with essentially glass intermixed. So fish, glass, fish, glass, fish, glass. And they're like, what is this? What it was the direct, it was from the meteorite impact.
The sphere.
So that meteorite hit the Yucatan Peninsula down in Mexico right now. It ejected a bunch of debris up into the atmosphere, and that debris rained down in what's now the Montana area. So you have fish from the ocean raining down, and those they have little sphericals of glass. Now, glass is highly unstable chemically, so it turns into clay. So they had all this intermixed, and it was from it raining down after that impact. Just an incredible fossil discovery. It's just amazing.
Any found here around this area?
From the Yucatan.
We got
ended up
white little children are going.
Yep.
It's like the Texarkana thing where we follow the children.
Similar.
At a smaller,
Yeah, right.
micro level.
Yeah.
Fish shrapnel.
Fish shrapnel.
Nice. Any found here?
Researching that, they think they were able to prove one of the dinosaur fossils was killed that particular day.
Oh, that's awesome. It's on PBS, like a NOVA program?
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out.
And I forgot all the ways that they proved it. But they said basically it was like a tsunami also.
Oh,
it went from
yes.
Because the ocean was way up here in the Dallas area.
Yep.
But this enormous tsunami carried stuff all the way to our northern states. So it was a real interesting program. They finally proved that dinosaur died the day of the catastrophe.
That's incredible. That's incredible. So we haven't found any debris like that here. Our rocks are not that old. Or excuse me, young. Our rocks are older than that. Everything here is early to mid-Cretaceous.
So that all has been washed away, basically.
Well, any sediment that would have been higher than us, and then washed away, exactly. So
As tall as the mountain.
we don't have the end of the Cretaceous period here. Our rocks are older than that. Now you go up to New Mexico, they do have that's called the KT boundary. And it's a line a few centimeters deep, or wide, I should say, in the Earth that they can map all over the Earth. Not every single spot, but worldwide. And that is it's a highly radioactive, but it's a radioactive layer in the Earth that is from that meteorite impact, where all the ash came and finally settled on Earth.
It's amazing.
It is. It really, really is. When you think about that impact, everything. If we think about like our modern day geography, that impact was to happen today. Everything in a radius from the Yucatan Peninsula up about maybe 1,500 miles into the inland of Texas would have been completely vaporized, instantly vaporized. Then you deal with fires. Then you have the tsunamis and the debris raining down, and if you're safe on the other side of the Earth, well, you're not that safe because still the sun's getting blocked out. And if you're a big old dinosaur who needs a lot of food, that food's gone.
Mm.
You don't get your food, then you're gone. And then 65 million years later, these weird bipedal creatures with 5 fingers on each hand dig you up and are like, ooh, what is this?
With hats on.
With hats.
With hats.
And they put you on display.
The hats are important.
Exactly. Exactly.
And then we put your bones back together and put you in a big.
Right? And then articulate you in weird ways. Can you think of, like, when you think about early paleontologists, they used to have T-Rex standing up like this. It was like a kangaroo. Well, that's a really odd body shape. T-Rex was over like this. Do you imagine if someone put our bones back together and, like, had us like this all the time? This is their normal body shape.
No,
It's absurd, right?
this was the body shape.
This is the body shape. Exactly.
I,
Exactly.
know
I
that,
want
but
to
they would
become
be
a
guessing.
fossil when I die.
This was incredible. What's your name?
Oh, my name's Zach Riggs.
Zachrix?
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Happy to do it.
This was lovely. I recorded you. I hope you don't mind.
Quite all right. Quite all right.
Part of the challenge.